The objective of the masterclass today is for all of us to leave with an understanding of the size and scale of PFI expiries over the next decade, the importance of a collaborative approach, the challenges and issues faced by key stakeholders, and the role of technology in supporting successful, efficient, effective, and equitable PFI expiries.
Graham, thank you. For those of you with an imagination, you need to now have the Star Wars theme playing, and we'll go to a long time ago in a galaxy far away. A generation of surveyors were taught that one day we would have whole life cost of assets from design to death, a dream nurtured by many, and PFI fulfilled the dream. It welcomed the risk of life cycle, whole life of assets, and the world of handback. It's fair to say that many of us of a certain age, when completing these deals in the early days, never thought we'd still be around to see them close. So welcome to reality. We successfully designed, built, and are still maintaining hundreds of hospitals, schools, roads, and railways for defence, the NHS, justice, highways. These are all frontline services, and everybody involved has been proud to be part of it and continue to deliver it. Just as a reminder for the picture, it was against the backdrop of the Maastricht Treaty, which provided a long time ago for European Economic and Monetary Union, and member states were required to keep public debt below a certain threshold. PFI was that mechanism to help achieve that and meet the Maastricht conversion criteria. And so we designed, built, financed, and operated public investment in delivering services, life cycle, and maintenance to these frontline services. Now, that's the picture, which is Roland Dumas and Pierre Verregaud signing the treaty. The other four pictures you'll have to work out. Our group looked a little different 30 years ago, and we were doing different things, and probably mostly with our hair.
Thank you, Paul. So this slide shows that we're at the beginning of a 30-year journey, which sees some 700 contracts expire. The white dots on the chart represent the number of PFIs expiring in each year, and the black bars are the lifetime value of the expiring contracts, which run right through to 2052. It's worth focusing on the fact that there are 185 expiries up until 2031. That's more than one per month. And that by 2026, most government departments will have PFI contracts that are expiring. So they should all be preparing now, if like Kershaw and the IPA and the NAO, they believe that expiry preparation should start 5 to 7 years out. Just looking at the chart, the peak is in 2036 with 59 expiring contracts, with a lifetime value of those expiring contracts of approximately £24 billion. The estimated lifetime values of these expiring contracts is some £290 billion. And I'm often asked why I quote this figure rather than the capital value of the assets of around 57 billion. Well, for me, the sum of the lifetime value is a better proxy for the complexity of the expiry and handback process. It gives you a better understanding of the magnitude or depth of the supply chain beneath the operating companies, and therefore gives you some insight into the procurement pain and transition trauma that might ensue.
Some time ago, I had the privilege of representing my professional body, the RICS, on the government soft landing review. And many of you will recall that this came from the dawning realization that our construction industry built some fantastic buildings, handed them over, walked away, and then the operation phase of the project started. And in a substantial number of projects, the design outputs that were planned and expected did not happen. So the realization of soft landings, which was to take the merger between construction and operation, was embedded. We think that that concept of soft landings works for this deal, where we are talking about taking the concept of the model from an operational PFI to a new working model and everything that that entails. So our teams that are delivering frontline services do so with commitment, passion, and it's important that those services continue to be delivered and received by the users. And the principles of soft landings, which is that transition, are applicable as much to handback as they were to the construction handover.
So based on my experience of leading on the expiry of the first large-scale PFI to come off the line, the PFI between DWP and Teleril Trillium, a 13.27 sale and leaseback, I'd say the analogy of a soft landing is appropriate. The aim here has to be continuity of service. That needs to be the singular focus of all parties involved. And to achieve a smooth transition and to handle the assets with due care and attention, a lot has to happen pre-expiry and around the expiry date. Beforehand, the focus will be on commercial due diligence, preparing for condition surveys, undertaking them, negotiating settlements, and delivering rectification works. In parallel is design of a post-PFI operating model, procurement, and then mobilisation. As the expiry date draws near, the focus needs to be on TUPE, systems and data migration, and operational readiness assessments before a period of what I call hypercare, either side of cutover, to make sure that transition is smooth. Afterwards, there's a period where everything needs bedding in. The small kind of peaks or the spikes post-cutover on the graph speak to some of the issues that may be observed. There may be issues with the help desk or the CAFM. There may be a true-up on assets for the incoming FM supply chain, and there will almost certainly be post-contract negotiations before account closure. This is also a period where communications and change management go into overdrive as service users and supply chain staff get used to the new model. Finally, the focus is on stabilisation, extended aftercare, and a post-programme review. This can be the contracting authority looking back at whether they made the business case, or better yet, it could be the contracting authority and PFI provider jointly assessing a balanced scorecard that they created at the outset to measure the success of the expiry process.
Everybody on the call will be familiar with the different people that make up a successful PFI. OpCo, SPV, the investors, the contracting authority, the most important people are the service users, the people who receive what we deliver. Every project I've had the privilege of being involved in, these people take pride in what's been delivered in terms of the buildings and the services and the daily frontline support. This is a professional pride. It goes from the shop floor to the boardroom. So if nothing else, with all of the various people that are involved that you can see on this diagram, we can at least agree that there is one focus, that nurses, doctors, teachers, students, passengers, office workers, all have a facility that delivers their requirements, that we have roads that are safe to travel on. So if nothing else, the end user must be the single purpose for everybody involved in all of this. And therefore, handback is about convergence. How do we pull a disparate group of people with slightly different agendas into focusing on a single purpose, which is keeping a seamless transfer of our social infrastructure projects? So a quick resume of those drivers, if we work, is the service users, the people who receive what we deliver, have to see no change in what they're getting. There still has to be theatres, wards, classrooms, playgrounds. Everything has to be working exactly as it was, seamlessly. The contracting authority wants to see a transition that is delivered smoothly, compliantly, and to time, and to budget. The investors, well, they want financial certainty and an orderly exit. The SPV, that little vehicle in the middle, wants an orderly exit. And we'll have and looking, the people who actually deliver the front line, they will be looking to be successful in the model that follows the PFI. That's an interesting arrangement of focus, as long as we remember that the users are what matter. And the only way we can do this is with collaboration. Collaboration, I hand over to the expert. Bill, there you go.
Good morning, everybody. The IPA report also emphasizes the importance of establishing good relationships and collaboration for handback. And we all know that's easier said than done. By definition, collaboration is an active, not passive activity. Put simply, it means we are all in a rowing boat together. And to get to the boat to where we want it to go in the time we want to is for all to row together. It's about mindset and behavior and the alignment of activity. If the substantive aim or purpose for handback is, as Paul highlighted, the seamless transition of social infrastructure, then the imperative is to ensure all the parties are able to acknowledge and believe that there is mutual benefit, we have shared goals, and we have alignment of interests, that there is independence in achieving handback aim, the value proposition. In other words, we're all in the rowing boat and no one has a free ride. So my model, as shown on the slide, has 4 steps and has this understanding at its starting position. Unless we have this belief, we're unlikely to succeed. My step 1 on the slide shows we must all acknowledge the drivers of the interested parties, the stakeholders, which of course includes the contracted assurance organisations and surveyors. And we need that to understand the context of the collaboration. Mapping these concerns and drivers helps us define the level of risk and the degree of alignment or not. This is the elephant in the room. But understanding these may take a bit of teasing out, and it involves my next step, step 2. Thus, step 1 and step 2 are a bit interlinked. Step 2 then in the model is about understanding the levels of trust. We all know trust is a foundation or cornerstone of effective teams and collaboration. But is there enough trust between the parties? Now, a lot has been written about trust, and we in the ICW have developed various tools and processes to understand, monitor and develop it, as we have in all aspects of collaboration. The absence of trust, though, stops healthy conflict resolution, as people are fearful and don't feel safe. This in turn undermines commitment and accountability, which in turn drives self-orientation and puts the focus on results or outcomes to the individuals rather than the enterprise as a whole. This is Patrick Lencioni's model of team dysfunctionality. We know that in some PFIs, the relationships are poor. We know that, and trust is low, and in some cases, is absent. Thus, before we can address the concerns and the drivers identified in step 1, we must understand the root causes of the symptoms and indicators of trust. So once we have the concerns mapped and we understand the root causes of the assessed levels of trust, we can then start to put in place the enabling work, the budgets, etc., for each successful relationship and behavior management, and the business-to-business collaboration, which is my step 3. And finally, as shown in step 4, we need a robust and recognized approach to do this. The much referenced author of collaboration, Morton T. Hansen, said, bad collaboration is worse than no collaboration. It will cost money, damage reputation, increase time and increase turn, and reduce experience and skills as people get fed up and leave. So we had better get this right from the start. Effective collaborative business relationships is about seeking the alignment of resources. What I'm talking about there is people, process, systems and infrastructure within the enterprise to the value proposition, the substantive aim we highlighted earlier. And I would recommend the parties adopt the internationally recognized collaborative business relationship management framework specification and the underpinning principles detailed in ISO 44001 and ISO 44000 respectively. We will then have a common language and a methodology for business-to-business collaboration and relationship management. And importantly, it will also provide the ability for independent audit because it's a standard. Thus, we're able to keep the feet to the fire of all the parties. In other words, ensure they do what they say they're going to do. Paul introduced my session by saying collaboration was the only way. It is, but it needs planning for and great collaborative leadership. And the levels and depth of collaboration needed will be different for each PFI. There is not one size fits all. As experience shows, sustaining collaboration and relationships need constant focus. If we take our eye off the ball, it will start to degrade and finally fail.
Thank you, Bill. So from experience, I think there are three main challenges that PFI providers and contracting authorities face. Whilst contracting authorities and PFI providers will have a direct role to play in each of these, it's important that everybody else, Paul and Bill have talked about, the investors, the SPVs and service users, who can less directly influence the process, need to have an awareness of all these aspects and an understanding of how demanding and resource intensive some of them can be. So challenge one involves contractual and commercial due diligence with a heavy focus on operations. Ideally, this is facilitated by reference to an up-to-date version of the contract that's been kept whole. Better yet, as a single version that's shared. The attention will be on obligations and SLAs and ongoing contractual and statutory compliance. The contracting authority may be seeking to demonstrate value for money and identifying efficiencies. And it's important that both providers and contracting authorities focus on collaboration. Graham, is there anything you'd like to add on contractual complexity?
Thanks very much, Max. Yeah, I would actually. And we're going to talk about complexity and collaboration, sticking with the theme. But look, there's no doubt the PFI contracts are beasts, which are not easy to manage. And sticking on our theme of going back in time and how things change over time, I always like to point out how contracts have become much more complex over time. If you look back to the 20th century, one of the top 10 construction projects was the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam contract comprised 172 pages. It had 8 defined terms and 150 contractual promises. Fast forward to today, the PFI contract comprises 13,500 pages. It has 5,000 defined terms referenced over 100,000 times. It's got 16 to 20,000 clause-to-clause cross-reference links and over 4,500 contractual promises. I think Paul's main building contract's got over 10,000 contractual promises. So it's widely recognised now that stakeholders should have access to a fully up-to-date version of the contract, a single version of the truth, if the parties are working collaboratively. But again, looking back at how things change over time, if the parties are using PDF for that single version of the truth, they're using 25-year-old technology, quarter of a century-old technology. And PDF's not designed for understanding and managing. It's designed for sealing and printing. So fast forward again to today, all stakeholders are now often provided with fully up-to-date contracts in an advanced 21st century format. This allows you not only to quickly find and understand what you're after, but also turns the contracts into dynamic tools, which are designed to proactively assist in ensuring contractual compliance. And many projects globally now do this. You can probably tell from my accent, but by value, this technology is used on over 80% of PPPs in Australia, 60% of PPPs in the UK, and in the last year alone, 20% of PPPs in Canada. And technology lends itself to best practice in collaborative working. So for example, on the Ministry of Defence main building PFI, the parties, which is Ministry of Defence of course, Modus, which is the SPV, of which Paul is Managing Director, Skanska and AME as the hard and soft FM providers respectively. They're ISO 44001 certified, as Bill's referred to, sorry Bill, and have approached contract management transparently and collaboratively, using modern technology to extract and manage all contractual obligations, with the parties viewing a common dashboard showing contractual compliance. And Paul, we've got a couple of minutes. I thought you might like to comment briefly on your experience on that project.
If I knew how to unmute, that would be brilliant, wouldn't it? Without a doubt, the fact that all 4 organisations have the same version, it means that we all talk from the same language. We have a dashboard which tells all of us what we're obliged to do, and we report on it. We report to the Cabinet Office on it, as well as to our own boards and to each other. For anybody that doesn't have it, I would heartily recommend it.
Back to you, Max.
Thank you both. So challenge two involves creating an expiry plan. And again, this should really be seen as a joint endeavour. It involves analysis of the exit provisions and whether what was written 20 or 30 years ago is sufficiently detailed and fit for purpose. The scope and the methodology of condition surveys will need to be agreed and surveys undertaken. There needs to be careful consideration of what reverts at no cost, and what needs to be bought back and how that's managed. And there may not be a process laid out. There needs to be consideration of what data and systems need to be transferred. And parties need to think about the operational, commercial and financial exposure they face and how to manage that with one another whilst maintaining a very collaborative relationship. I think it's important that everybody involved acknowledges there'll be challenging negotiations and there may be some things that are under dispute, but through it all preserving the relationship is key so that the state critical infrastructure is handed back in the right way and the people passionate about service delivery can carry on. In parallel, looking at challenge 3 is the contracting authorities' challenge in relation to business strategy and the future operating model. They need to know what they need post PFI to continue operating. They'll need business case approval for their chosen target operating model and to procure and mobilize it. It shouldn't be overlooked that this may take years where OG processes are used and will involve people thinking about developing service requirements for contracts that they may not have had to think about for 20 or 30 years. It may involve redesigning the client function, operating processes and systems, and will involve operational readiness assessments. Doing all of this simultaneously and properly can, subject to the scale of the PFI, involve management of complex interdependencies across these 3 challenges. The process needs to be supported by proper program structures with a focus on the right capacity so that business as usual functions are not distracted and the lights are kept on. Capability needs to be looked at so that mature commercial dialogue can take place based on evidenced positions, not conjecture and emotion. There also needs to be sufficient budget for the entire process and a relentless focus on risk and risk mitigation. So finally, as Graham and I know, this can all be done in a single diagnostic platform which covers all of the areas drawing on the required multidisciplinary team. We believe that technology is integral to expediting commercial due diligence and assessment of condition, management of rectification works, and management of data to support procurement and transition. And more importantly, management of complex interdependencies and risks. I will now hand over, or should I say hand back, to Amanda or Graham, who will facilitate the breakout.